Labour is finished. Finito. Kaput. May it rest in peace. Blocking Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, from standing in the upcoming Denton and Gorton by-election, which is a sort of seat normally you would just weigh the vote for Labour rather than bother counting it, that really seals their fate. That really is the last nail hammered into their coffin with much aplomb, I have to say. Andy Burnham, of course, is one of the only Labour politicians who isn't slightly less popular than most strains of the bubonic plague. Now, look, a controversial opinion here. Totally rational on the part of Starmer's goons to block Andy Burnham. If the survival of Starmer's goons is their only priority, makes sense. Burnham isn't standing, let me just put this gently, to add a bit of magic, a little bit of, je ne sais quoi to Starmer's team and really turn it all around for them. The real reason is he wants to overthrow Keir Starmer in a coup when Labour is inevitably thrashed in the coming May elections. In his letter written in support of being able to stand in the by-election, he said he would be there in Westminster to support the work of the government, not undermine it. He didn't say he was loyal to the Prime Minister. You see, this is what was going to happen. In May, there are parliamentary elections in Scotland and Wales and local elections in England. Labour's going to get wiped out. In Wales, Plaid Cymru are set to form their first ever government. They're set to take the post of First Minister. Let me put that in perspective. Welsh Labour is the most electorally successful party on the face of the earth. I am not exaggerating. That is not me kidding in any shape or form. As long as democracy has properly existed in this country, Welsh Labour have always won in Wales. Do you know what they got in a recent poll? 10%. Now, if Burnham was back in Westminster and Plaid Cymru were on our screens doing rousing renditions of the Welsh national anthem to celebrate forming their first ever Welsh government, Burnham would just say, if he was in Parliament, well, I'm afraid to say it's Starmer remaining in number 10. That's undermining the worth of government. I'm your only hope to turn it all around. But here's the thing. If factional control of Labour is your thing, sure, makes sense, block Burnham. If your priority was, I don't know, saving the Labour Party, that's a different matter. Starmer, you see, is slightly less popular at this point than Fred West. His net favourability is minus 57, according to YouGov, the joint lowest of any Prime Minister other than Liz Truss, famously, of course, beaten by a lettuce. Look, I quit Labour a couple of years ago, as my vastly improved mental health will testify. In a sense, I'm intruding on private grief. Though obviously, they are the government. I am invested in this country not being run by a bunch of soulless hacks. This party, however, is facing oblivion. But the people who run the Labour Party, these goons, as I keep talking about, would rather burn the party to the ground than allow someone even vaguely interested in redistributing wealth and power from the tiny elite who run the country in favour of ordinary people. Let's listen to Keir Starmer now, who is, for now, our Prime Minister.
Minister, closer to home, you led the charge over the weekend to stop Andy Burnham running for Parliament. You argued the case. You personally voted against him at the National Executive Committee. Many MPs are furious about this. One MP called you cowardly. Can you explain to them why you blocked him?
Yeah, but be very clear about that. We have really important elections already across England for local councils, very important elections in Wales for the government there, and very important elections in Scotland for the Scottish government. That will affect millions of people, and we're out campaigning on the cost of living, and they're very important elections. We need all of our focus on those elections. Andy Burnham's doing a great job as the Mayor of Manchester, but having an election for the Mayor of Manchester when it's not necessary would divert our resources away from the elections that we must have and that we must fight and win. And resources, whether that's money or people, need to be focused on the elections that we must have, not elections that we don't have to have. And that was the basis of the NEC decision.
Just look at his eyes. The eyes of a haunted, rattled, cornered man who knows his execution looms, just doesn't know the exact date and time. Now, one of the key arguments for blocking Burnham is that there would be a mayoral election caused by him vacating his position as mayor in Greater Manchester, and Labour might lose that election. I'll give you an example. One journalist has posted a Labour MP texts, "The National Executive Committee has stopped reform taking Manchester. Fucking Burnham risked handing over the whole city to those twats just for his own ambition of being Prime Minister in a government that he didn't build, leading on a majority he didn't win. These people are unpleasant, yes, and also completely delusional. Let's just start with one element here, the majority. Here's what happened at the last election, in case they forgot. The Conservative Party essentially doused themselves in petrol and set themselves on fire. Just one catastrophe after the other. Liz Truss, that debacle was enough to finish them. But they had the whole Boris Johnson nightmare. You know, they had all the scandals, worst squeeze in living standards ever recorded. We could go on. It was just one disaster after the other. And on top of all that, they then ran, the worst general election campaign anyone's ever run. I mean, they basically spent a few weeks vomiting all over themselves. You know, they handed the government over basically to Labour. They basically gift wrapped it. It was just one open goal for the Labour Party. And even in the most favourable conditions imaginable, do you know what Labour won in that election? A third of the vote, on the lowest turnout in the history of British democracy. Do they really think that bad result, by the way, which they only got because, you know, in terms of the because they go, well, we won 2/3 of the seats. Yeah, because of our electoral system, crucially as well, you know, fused with the fact Nigel Farage's reform split the right of centre vote. Do they really think they got that result because of Keir Starmer's charisma? And do they really not think that actually someone else leading Labour might have done slightly better? No? Well, as I said, they are delusional. I just want to zone in on the other part of the argument here, which has been shared by the Labour hierarchy, which is the risk of Labour losing Greater Manchester. Just take a moment. In May 2024, Andy Burnham, Labour's candidate, won over 63% of the vote in Greater Manchester, more than 6 times the share of his second-place Tory rival. Reform came fourth with 7.5% of the vote. If the Labour hierarchy really think within 2 years of winning a result, which, you know, with the share of a vote that a lot of dictatorships get when they rig an election, they really think they could lose one of their key heartlands to reform, then they're admitting their party faces oblivion. That's what they're admitting. And if they were rational, they go, oh my God, we need to change direction. Look at us. But they're not. And that sums it up. Thing is, right, Burnham is not some raging lefty. Now, he was a New Labour special advisor who, you know, in 2010, when he stood for Labour leadership, was actually, you know, the ultra Blairite candidate. And then he became Shadow Health Secretary and went on a journey under Ed Miliband to the soft left, if you like. And then in 2015, he stood as a leadership candidate and basically went off into the Blairite trajectory again. And, you know, Jeremy Corbyn became leader of the Labour Party as a result because of Burnham going off in that direction. And I think since then, he's gone on a genuine, authentic journey to the soft left. He's a decent guy compared to this crew. He's got a solid record as Mancunian mayor with progressive policies like public ownership of buses. He understands the old right-wing mantras just aren't relevant for the world we live in. He's had a pragmatic readjustment. He's not an ideologue in kind of hardcore Blairite way. Do I really think, given his record, he would stand up to the right-wing parliamentary Labour Party, be able to withstand all the extra pressure as well from the Tories, reform, the media, the big business elite, the United States under Trump, the pro-Israel lobby? I don't know, if I'm honest. I'm not confident of that at all. But he would try and go in a different, more progressive direction. And as I've said, Labour's masters would rather burn the party to the ground than that ever happened. Let's listen to Nadia Whittome, who's one of the few remaining decent Labour MPs.
A lot of backbench MPs feel is that our loyalty is to the Labour Party, not to some of the people at the top of the Labour Party who are wrecking the party that we love and what is currently the only electoral vehicle to prevent a reform-led government in 2029. The stakes are so high.
To be clear, you think Keir Starmer doing what he's doing, Keir Starmer staying in office, he is the one who is risking reform reaching power?
Well, I think ultimately the responsibility lies with the leader.
Well, she's right. They are wrecking the party, but they don't care. They just want factional control. They would rather burn the party to the ground than let their faction lose control of the Labour Party. Now, look, I always try to keep to the politics, and I try to avoid going personal, despite a lot of provocation. But please let me have this one exception. The Guardian quote one Labour minister responding to the party's decision to block Burnham, saying, "You reap what you sow, Andy. It's harvest time. You reap what you sow, Andy. It's harvest time." The thing is, right, you've got to ask yourself, do normal people speak like that? I mean, they don't, do they? Do you know who speaks like that? Dickheads. That's who speak like that. This is a dickheadocracy ruled by dickheads. It's not just that they're soulless hacks who'd sell their own mother on eBay for a parliamentary seat. They're just utterly unpleasant weirdos. You can imagine that minister getting off, probably literally, when he typed out that message. He was like, "It's harvest time. Oh my God, what a zinger." Total freaks. Now, Burnham is on the warpath. He tweeted, "The fact that the media was informed of the NEC decision before I was tells you everything you need to know about the way the Labour Party is being run these days. You would think over 30 years of service would count for something, but sadly not." Labour strenuously denied this, but Burnham ally Sacha Lord tweeted, "100% true. Link to the Guardian at 11:56, then post online." Burnham called at 12:12 and email 12:20. More Labour lies. Now, Tom Baldwin, who is a journalist who's basically in the court of Starmer, wrote a gushing biography, tweeted, "I've always liked Andy Burnham, but the prospect of him returning to Westminster has already added to inward-looking psychodrama that does no one any good. And an unnecessary by-election for Mayor of Manchester might well have resulted in long-term damage to his reputation too." Now, Burnham said in response, "I'm not sure losing a by-election does us any good either, Tom." Oof, that's really set off Starmer's crew. What does this all mean? It means ultra-Blairite West Streeting is in pole position because Starmer is going to fall. That's what's going to happen because he's finished. But that suits Labour's masters just fine. This crew believe in nothing but power for its own sake and defining themselves against the left. Look at their record. Kicking pensioners, kicking disabled people, one of the harshest asylum systems in the whole of Europe, raiding the rhetoric of Enoch Powell, gutting the international aid budget, sucking up to Trump, arming a genocide. Freebies from rich donors because they are obsessed with the trappings of power. No vision, no soul. West Streeting's already deeply unpopular with the electorate. And as leader, he'd come across as even more cynical and slimy and unprincipled than Keir Starmer. But he would keep the same general political direction. He'd probably double down on it. The party would sink under him. But they'd go, fine, let it sink, rather than let anyone vaguely more progressive take over. The fight in the Gorton and Denton by-election is between the Green Party, led by Zach Polanski, and the Reform Party. The Greens are reporting that support for Labour has collapsed on the doorstep. Labour is terrified of the Greens. Not an exaggeration. In the Times newspaper, they printed this: "A Reform win would be terrible," said a sometime advisor for the leadership, "but a Green win would be existential." Damn straight. Let's call this, catchily, Caerphillyisation. Caerphilly is, of course, the Welsh constituency where there was a by-election back in October. This is a seat Labour has only ever won. Back in 1931, Labour's almost wiped out in the country, but they still kept Caerphilly. Do you know what they got this time? 11% of the vote. Plaid Cymru won that seat on an unashamedly left-wing platform. The pundits said that it was in the bag for the Reform Party. Plaid presented themselves as the only real alternative to Reform, and the good people of Caerphilly voted for them, and they won by a decent margin over Reform. The Green Party need to emulate the approach of Plaid Cymru in Gorton and Denton. They need to say to Labour voters, do you really want to vote for a party which clobbers pensioners and disabled people, which sucks up to Donald Trump, which is complicit in Israel's genocide, and which has just been more of the same shit the Tories subjected the country to for so many years? A party who's got no answers to the country's problems. And now Suella Braverman is the latest Tory to defect to Reform. The Greens can say that Reform is just Rishi Sunak's cabinet, the government you kicked out, just led by Nigel Farage this time, run by and for millionaires who want to suck up to Trump even more than Labour's already done and flog off our National Health Service. This is a massive opportunity for the Green Party to change politics, to show people they are the alternative to Reform and the Conservatives, and that Labour voters and any voters who want actual change should vote for them. They need to throw everything at it. They need the biggest ground army possible. They need people like yourselves to travel to that seat and knock on doors. And they need to be prepared for the smear campaign coming their way, because Labour they're going to fight this in such a dirty way. They're going to throw anything they can at the Green Party. And the Greens need to constantly shift to their positive message. We're going to tax the rich to invest in public services. We're going to have public ownership of our services. We're going to stand up to Donald Trump. We're going to have a foreign policy based on peace. We're going to use the climate emergency to invest in the jobs of the future, to improve the living standards of the people of this country. We could go on. Because Labour sunk. It's over for them. The question is what comes next. Do we have a politics of despair and hatred? Or do we have a message of hope instead? Well, I think if the Greens can pull this off, and they're going to have, as I've said, everything thrown at them, that could change everything in this country. So, if that's what you invested in, go and help if you can. Please like and subscribe. Help us take on the awful media ecosystem in this country at patreon.com/ownjones84. I'm finishing my book, The Fall of the West, as I keep saying, which will be out in October. But when I finish that, which is in a few weeks, we'll concentrate far more on this channel. We're going to go up, for example, to Gorton Denton and speak to the good people there, which will be fascinating. So more of that soon. You make all of that possible, as I've said, at patreon.com/ownjones84. Share the video, press like, subscribe, leave your comments, always read those. I'll speak to you in a bit.